In today's video, I'm doing something a little bit different with my macro photos. A few weeks ago, I recorded a video where I took a lovely, fresh orange flower from a bouquet and took some photos. And I quite liked the results, but within that same bouquet that I bought was also this lovely sunflower. 3 weeks later, it's not looking quite as fresh. But for photos, I think it looks even better. So I'd set up a similar scene. I've got the sunflower here ready to photograph. I've got a light on standby and I've got my camera on the tripod ready to go. But when I took my first test shot, I actually had a happy accident. I mean that in a Bob Ross way, not that I pissed myself. You understand. Basically, what I'd done is left my camera in the monochrome mode. Now, I'd had that in when I was out taking some street photos, but when I first took a shot, suddenly I got this black and white image of this flower. And I absolutely loved it, because when I initially set this shot up, I expected this to be about use of color, about using the sort of muted colors of the yellow petals and the greenery around it. But actually, the black and white shot really spoke to me. I took a few test shots and every single one of them looked really, really cool. I mean, even now, I've just got an LED in an umbrella up here so I can film me, but it's giving a nice ambient light in the room as well. So if I just take a quick shot of this now, F9, 30th of a second, tap to focus and take the photo. Like, it just looks so cool. It looks really sort of like vintagey, a little bit like the sort of shots you might have seen in like the 40s and 50s, maybe using sort of pinhole cameras, early film photography. It's got that sort of vibe to it. So I thought what I'm going to do is play around with this a little bit more. I am going to use some of the ambient lights. I am going to use some of my own light, but I thought it was worth an experiment and just to see if I can be a little bit more artistic in my macro shots rather than just trying to take an accurate image of the flower. I'm instead going to work with this black and white, work with these amazing textures that we've got and see if I can turn out something that looks a little bit different. I think I've got great value from this bouquet of flowers. I've now got 2 videos out of it, one when they were fresh and one when they're very much not fresh. And I think I only paid $2.99 from Aldi, so not bad. So I've actually just been starting out with my 50mm prime on here. Now this isn't actually even a macro lens, but you know, I'm getting nice and close up to the flower. I probably will switch to my 100mm at some point to get even closer up on these details, but I'm just starting out by trying to take some wider shots of the flowers. So again, this one, I've got my camera basically, as you can see, on a level plane with the flower here. The flower is just sort of pinned up in this vase. I've shown this shot already, but let's take it again just so you can see what I'm doing. Looks lovely. I love as well that this is just using the light that's in the room. I'm using the video light that's just flooding the whole area with light, but it still gives this really cool effect. I can stand to move the camera quite a bit closer to the flower, and I'm much more now filling the frame with the flower so we can get much closer up on these amazing textures. But the light hasn't changed, the settings haven't changed, so it's essentially going to be the same shot, just a little bit closer up. But I think that looks super cool. So what happens then if I do start to bring in my own light? Well, what I've got here is this SmallRig RC60B. Now this is a very small little box-sized LED light. It does have its own battery, but as you can see, I've got a USB-C cable plugged in because you only get about 20 minutes of battery life from it, and for this video that's not enough. But it's really small, you can put it on a stand, but I find it much better to be able to just hold it, and this way I can move it around my subject and put that light wherever I want. The great thing is that it also comes with this quite decent sized little softbox, so we can pop that on, and suddenly we've got quite a nice little macro lighting setup. Let's flick that on, turn the power up to 100%, and now we can start to move that light around our subject. And as we do, it's really going to dramatically change where those shadows are being formed. So I think I'm going to start off with a fairly classic sort of 45-degree angle coming into the flower here. Now, because we're suddenly bringing in a lot more light, we are going to have to change up the settings. Now, I want to stay about F9 for sharpness here, but I'm going to bring my shutter speed much quicker, up to 125th of a second, and take the shot. And the difference between that and the one using more of the ambient light is huge, because suddenly we've basically made all of the rest of the scene fall to black. So we've got a lot more contrast, a lot more detail. It's certainly a much punchier look. I don't necessarily prefer it. I actually quite like the low contrast version of the first one, but this is part of our experimenting. So let's try it another way. Let's try it from over this side. Same settings. That looks pretty cool. We could even maybe, I could even maybe bring it off to this side. Yeah, again, that looks pretty cool. Oh, yeah, bring it off and just, this is the great thing. You can find out little things. Because I'm just hand holding, I can see that there's a very big difference in the light, sort of depending on the angle I shine it at. So rather than shining it directly at the flower, I'm sort of feathering the light. So it's only really seeing the edge of that light. And as a result, we really get a much moodier look here. Yeah, this really nice light, much softer. Obviously, if I point it more towards the background as well, like this, then we will get a bit more of that background lit up. Not a lot, but a little bit. I can maybe bring my shutter speed down to a 40th of a second. Now that is going to capture more of our background, but then I just bring the light further away, or possibly just turn down the intensity of the light to maybe 40%. This way we can sort of balance it a little bit more by having just some extra light, but also still having some of that background as well. That looks kind of cool, but I think I really right now need to play around with the actual composition, because I don't really love this look. It's just a little bit flat to my eye. So I'm going to just have a bit of a play. The thing is, I really like seeing it from a distance. So I know this is supposed to be about macro, and right now it isn't. And I think I might make it even less about macro by pulling the lens away again. Maybe even quite a long way. Now, the vase I've got it in is not especially attractive, and you can see the sort of weird toothpick thing that I've pushed through it in order to make it stand like it is. But maybe I can try and Photoshop some of that out. But I do really like it just sort of standing on its own like this. So I'm going to switch my lenses up. I'm going to put the 100 on. So at least I'm going to be doing some macro today. I am going to also put on the lens hood, just because I don't want to get any flare from this light, and it could well cast some flare over the lens. So just to help that, I'm going to pop that on the front. I actually immediately like this view. I haven't moved the tripod at all, so the camera's in the same position, but obviously with this 100mm lens on, we're now getting much more close up on these details. And again, I think I really like this sort of flatter, low contrast view. This is just being lit by the umbrella of my video light, but I do think it looks cool. So let's take that shot. And now I can bring my light back in. I'm going to increase the power maybe to around 75%, and we're going to increase the shutter speed on the camera now to 100th of a second, and just see if we can find any better looking shots that we want. Hand holding lights like this, particularly if you're working with LEDs, is such a great way of experimenting with your lighting, because you don't have to take a shot and then wait to see what it looks like. You don't have to move heavy light stands and big softboxes around. You literally just move it where you want to, and as you do, you can see exactly where that light is going to fall on your image. So maybe with this one, I'm going to feather it out a little bit, so we're getting a bit more of this edge light. In fact, I really like how that looks. The light really is sort of barely falling on it. So I'm going to bring it off a bit more, but increase my shutter speed. Do something a little bit more like that, which looks cool. What about something coming in much more from the top? It's very contrasty, very moody. From below looks a little weird to me. I don't really like that so much. And I could even sort of basically hold the light directly over the camera. I have to increase that shutter speed, and we're getting very much a forward firing look at the flower itself. I think that looks cool, but what I'm going to do is just bring it even closer now, so that I can start to actually really get up close on some of these really great looking details. I quite like filling the frame like this with just sort of the top corner of the flower, so it's sort of arcing through our image. Oops, didn't mean to take that, but there we go. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. So again, I'm going to bring in my light. So I'm going to bring my shutter speed back up, bring in the light. There's one of our shots. Again, I think what we're going to be going for here is something really, really moody and low key, possibly even a little bit abstract, because it might not necessarily be obvious what it is that we're taking photos of. That might be a bit of a stretch at this point, but it's not like we're just taking a photo of a big, beautiful, fresh sunflower. Because it has dried up, it has gone crispy, it's really changed the look of it. It's changed it from something fresh and vibrant into something with what I think is a little bit more of a story to tell. This is quite cool as well, because I'm holding the light so far behind it. It's really only these green parts that are lighting up, so it's almost being backlit. So what if I took that shot? Right now I have got the monochrome color profile applied to my images, so that's why I'm able to see them as black and white shots on the camera. Now I find that really, really helpful because it allows you to actually visualize how your shots are going to look as black and white photos, rather than taking them in color and just having to assume that they will work in black and white. But I am shooting these in RAW, so that does mean that when I import them into my computer, they will go back to being color images. So I always have the option, if I want, to re-edit these as color versions, or I can apply a black and white preset over the top and get it back to what I initially had in mind. So I really like doing that because it does give that flexibility, because maybe not all of these I want as black and white, maybe some of them will work really well in color. So I probably will play around a little bit in Lightroom, but certainly right now I am imagining all of these very much as stark and moody black and white shots. I sometimes think that black and white gets forgotten about in macro, because so often in macro photography we're photographing natural subjects, insects, leaves, flowers, and so much of that relies so heavily on colour that really the idea of eliminating colour from these scenes just seems completely pointless. But as a result, I think that means that when you do macro photography in black and white and you do it well, it can really stand out. So if you've never tried doing it, I definitely recommend at least applying a black and white preset to some of your favorite macro photos that you've already done and seeing if doing a new edit can inject some fresh life into them. Okay, let's move the camera around a little bit and try and find a different composition. I am going to bring it away again, because by bringing it away but having the longer lens on rather than having the 50 on, it's actually giving me a nice full view of the flower, but it's sort of compressed the scene a little bit more, so I don't have to worry about having the stick and stuff that I've got down here. We're really just focusing on the flower itself, which I think looks great. So I'm just going to take a quick shot right now, f9, a 30th of a second, because again, we are just using the nice ambient light in the room, and I think that works really well, particularly in black and white. My strong suspicion that this would look awful and completely pointless in color. In fact, here is a color version of this same shot just for reference. Hey, maybe actually it looks great, but I reckon it probably won't. But in black and white, I think this works really nicely. So now we've got that, let's bring in this light again, moving it around the scene, changing up where that light's coming from. Maybe over here again. What I might do, bring that shutter speed right back up, bring the intensity of the light up by having the bright light on the flower, but the camera is exposing for that bright light. That's what allows all of our ambient, all of our background to fall into darkness, so that all we're seeing are those really nice highlights on the flower itself. We can still change the intensity of the light by simply moving it further away. So if it looks a little too bright, we can bring it further back. So here, and I take the same shot, you can see it's a little bit overexposed. And I could maybe turn down the intensity of the light itself, or simply we bring it back somewhere around here, and that shot looks a lot better. And of course, as I bring it back, more of that light is going to be falling on our background. So if I did want to light that background a little bit more, I could maybe angle the light like this, turn the intensity up, maybe slightly reduce the shutter speed, And now we've definitely got a lot more of that background visible. So it isn't so much the flower against a black background. We've definitely got some tones going on. And that's kind of cool. But I don't think that's what I want. I think what I want is really quite a punchy, contrasty look to our flower. And I'm going to achieve that by going bright with this and a fast shutter speed with this. I really like backlighting it just so we get these edges, because that just looks like this, but I might need to sort of adjust the composition a little bit. It is slightly difficult to see when I'm reaching over here with the light, but trying to look back at my camera over here. So many of these shots are really low key, and that is absolutely by design. What I really want is for just a very minimal amount of the flower to actually be lit up and visible, because it creates such a great mood, creates such a sense of, I suppose, aging, because we've got all of the crisped up leaves of this once beautiful, vibrant flower, but now it's all dried out and essentially at the end of its life. And I do think that sort of using this, these tones and these shadows is a really great way to add that contrast, to emphasize those textures and to really help kind of tell that story. I do think that looks really, really cool. Okay. This might actually be one of my favourite at-home photo shoots I've done in a while. I really, really like these results. Let's use the macro lens for what it really wants to be used for. Proper, up-close macro. I think I'm actually going to get even closer up on just the sort of the green, the outside leaves of the sunflower, because I think the way they catch the light looks really cool. Something like that as a bit of a detail shot. We've filled the frame there with both the dried up petals and the leaves on the top, and I think it works quite well. It certainly ticks the box of macro, but I actually do think that generally I prefer the wider shots that shows the whole of the flower head. For now, I think I have taken enough photos. I will certainly be experimenting a little bit more with this, but my process is going to remain the same. I'm going to have my light handheld. I'm going to be moving it around the scene and just sort of moving my camera in and out. But I think it really shows for me the value of experimenting in not just doing one setup on a scene, but actually moving your light, moving your camera, and seeing what other shots you can get, because every time you change things up, you get a completely different shot. And in this case, I have had, as I say, that happy accident of inadvertently leaving my camera in the black and white mode. And I think I probably wouldn't have tried doing these in black and white had I not have accidentally seen that shot and thought, oh yeah, that actually looks pretty good. So sometimes those accidents can really pay off. I think what I'm going to do now though is take the shots over into Lightroom and see about doing that proper black and white conversion, and maybe even see if we want to do some in color. So I've imported all of the photos into Lightroom, and as you can see, they have all reverted back to color because we're shooting in RAW and Lightroom doesn't recognize the black and white profile I was using. It's very easy to fix though. What I'm going to just start off by doing straight away is going into the Profile tab, and I'm going to go into the black and whites, and I'm just going to have a little flit over the top of these and find one that I think looks good as a base. And I do think that black and white 04, it's starred because it is one of my favorite ones. It's going to apply that profile. Hopefully you can see all this. I know that I am covering a little bit, but that profile section is right in the top right in Lightroom. So now I've applied the profile to that one. All I'm going to do is press Command C to copy, make sure that black and white 04 is definitely checked. Press copy. I'm going to then just select all in this view right here, and then I'm going to press Command V, copy V if you're on Windows, and it's just going to paste that profile to every single photo in the series. Now I'm going to be applying a lot more edits on top. This is just going to get them back to essentially the same point that they were in camera, so I'm not having to do a conversion every single time. I've just done that one as a blanket look, and now we can dive in and actually see which ones we really like. And so these were the ones that were a little bit more using the ambient light, and I do like them. I know that they look a little bit more drab than some of the other ones, but there is something about that low contrast look that I do really like here. So I'm just doing a few tweaks just to slightly bring down the highlights on here. If we have a zoom in, they are reasonably sharp. I have done this at quite a high ISO, and I actually don't mind that because it's kind of giving it that little bit of film grain, which I think works really well with the overall look. Let's have a look at the before and before and after is only going to go back to the color, but you see the point. I think that looks pretty nice as it is. Let's have a look at some of the other more dramatic ones though. Something like this shot. Yeah, I just love the contrast. I love that look. There's so little really that I think needs to be done, simply because we crafted those shadows, we crafted that contrast when we actually took the photo by putting the light in the right place. I mean, I could try and bring out some of the shadows just to kind of bring out a little bit more detail here. You could bring out some of the black point if you want to bring back some of that detail, but overall, I don't think there's anything much that I want to do to those ones. I mean, ditto some of these ones, to be honest. If anything, I want to kind of amp up that contrast by maybe even bringing down the shadows, upping the whites a little bit. Some of these ones really, really minimal lighting because it's just the highlights on the edges of these petals and the leaves that's actually getting that light at all. If we turned down that highlight, you can see that we're basically losing the entire image. So I am just going to increase the highlight and increase those whites a little bit too. I might actually see about just increasing that black point a little, but also I'm going to use the curve to add just a little bit of a filmic fade by simply dragging up that black point. And as it does, you can see that it hasn't, what it means is that the image isn't dropping to complete black here. Instead, it's more of a sort of a mid-tone. If we just turn that off and on, it's given it that sort of filmic look, which I really like. I could actually bring the exposure up a little bit here, maybe bring those highlights back. And I do quite like that. This one, have I done anything to this? No. And I don't think I want to. Look at it. I love it. Straight out of camera. Absolutely love it. So I'll be honest, I'm really, really pleased with how these have turned out. It's been a great project to experiment with the light, experiment with the angles. It's been really easy to do. The editing in particular, as you've just seen, has been super easy because we crafted the shot exactly as we wanted when we took the image. And that's so easy to do when you're just hand holding a light. So these kind of macro projects, they do not take huge amounts of setup. They don't take huge amounts of equipment. They just rely on you having that extra bit of time to get creative. So that brings me to an end of this video. I really hope you've enjoyed watching it because I have really, really enjoyed doing this one, particularly because I didn't intend for this to be this moody, low-key, black and white shoot. I'd kind of gone into it expecting it to be light and vibrant and a bit more like the ones I did last time. So accidentally having it in my monochrome profile has really paid off for me. But if you have enjoyed this video, then do please hit that like button and certainly do consider subscribing to my channel if you don't already, and I will see you next time.